So it's far more exciting, and that's quite subtle.
Hello guys, it's Anders, and today we're looking at Native Instruments Driver. We're just going to go over its basic parameters and what we can use it for. Personal favourite, kicks and bass lines. Let's get into that.
Okay, so as you can see, we are now in Logic. I've got loaded up Drum Lab and just a really simple drum loop. And attached to it, I've got Driver. It's currently disabled if we enable it. Bit of a difference straight away. So I'm just going to go over what Driver is, how to use it, and just give you an idea of what can be done with it. So from left to right, firstly, we've got input. This is really simply the input that comes into it. If you think of it like a guitar pedal, it's your signal going in. You might want to amplify it. You might need to attenuate it and dial it back a bit. Can dial it back by 10. Put it out by 10 and really hammer the sound and drive it into Driver. Next, we've got our resonance. So this is like having an EQ resonant peak. This does affect the sound when it's going through, regardless really of where the settings are, because there's always a frequency set. So even though at the minute we're at 35.48 kilohertz, well above the frequency of hearing, resonance is still going to give us a bit of a boost in there. So whatever we do with it, it's always going to have some kind of effect when we introduce it. And as you can hear, it directly correlates with frequency as you would expect. So just below here, we've got envelope. Relatively self-explanatory. We've got in and SC though. That's quite simple. It's the normal input, so it's taking the audio coming from the drums in this case. But we could also use a sidechain to trigger the driver and how it would affect the signal that's going onto it, which can be quite useful. So we can have the effect triggered by, say, a kick drum, but have driver actually giving that distortion and sound to another sound source. For our example today, we'll just leave it on in. We've then got smooth. It is quite honestly how smooth the envelope goes. If you ever have a look at an envelope, an ADSR style, they can be these really like sharp points, right? So really rapidly up and then just drop straight off. The more smooth we have on, think of it as like rounding those edges. So it's more like a roller coaster than it would be a graph, for example. And then release. This is very much like release on a compressor. So every time a loud sound comes in and some distortion happens, this releases and dials it back. But say that loud sound snaps in again, it will re-trigger the distortion and the release occurs again. It's exactly the same as the release on a compressor, really, and it's just got a dial in from 0 through to 10 based on preference when you're listening to the sound. Frequency, relatively self-explanatory. It does correlate directly with the LPF or notch up here. And while we're talking about the frequency and the distortion modules, these two white bands here, we've got these two sliders underneath them. Isn't exactly obvious what they do. So this is the envelope and envelope amount. And also if we are to click on it, we have envelope polarity. So we can actually make it so the envelope works in reverse. So this way it could dial the frequency backwards, for example, rather than always just pushing it upwards. And the other slider is the amount of oscillation, or in this case, it's AM. And we'll look at that in just a second. So after that is color. Color is quite simple, really. It adds harmonics, but the further to the left it is, the less harmonics it's adding, and it starts at the lower frequency going through to the high frequency. So just a little bit on like this, you're going to get some more lower harmonics added, and the more we push in, the brighter the sound's going to get as it adds them in. And it sort of symbolizes that with the dial around it showing sort of the harmonics that are going to be added, getting brighter in different areas, right? So AM, it means audio modulation. We've got a nice little switch here, which, as you can see, it changes the three parameters at the bottom. If we have it on audio, it's using the incoming audio or the sidechain audio as a modulation source. So same as how we could have the envelope go into a sidechain, we can also do that with the modulation source. And then we've got some like clip cutoff. And we've got this lag control here. What that really does is limit the amount of modulation that's going to be coming in. So you can literally sort of add some lag to it, so it only does a smaller area if you wanted, or you could modulate it so it becomes less and more. You can switch that between audio and oscillator. Oscillator wise, we've got 2 ranges and obviously a rate. Makes sense, right? I like using this on things like drums, mainly just the kick drum, but we're just going to do some sounds really quickly in DrumLab here just to get an idea of what we can do with this. Let's just disable that. Yeah, so it's far more exciting, and that's quite subtle. We can get far more extravagant with it, especially if we start using AM. Cool, so that is a little introduction to Driver. Hopefully you now understand a little bit better about what each parameter does, how you can use it. I hope the video was helpful for you guys, and have fun distorting everything.